Okay, so I'm at the final of the story, the big castle thing between Miraculous, Luz, Shadow Huey, and Falcon. I love the fact the author decided to do an entire extended sequence just shitting on this game design. You see this? And then you play the whole game, the whole level, and it's just nothing but these. Why did Capcom think, hey, yo, let's have an entire level that's just nothing but these goddamn snake donuts just going back and forth? It's just ripe for comedy. At the end, Mega Man X6 is just a cluster of bad ideas. Hello, everyone. It is I, Dark Symphony 777, and it's a have a fucking day. Sorry for getting tongue tied. I was having too much fun with that intro. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story. And finally, in my opinion is not indicative of the world, so please respect that. So, after much time, because this review specifically was long overdue. This pick was literally suggested to me at like the beginning of the year, because I decided I'm gonna do like 100 reviews, and it took me this long to get to this one. It took me 9 long months. It is Total Drama Island Multiverse Edition by Static Shock 1. It is a Total Drama crossover fanfiction, and well, before I get into the actual review, I do like most of the story. There's one very specific part of the story I don't like. I'll talk about that in a bit, because it has to do with the plot. But I at least want, before I get into the actual review, I at least want to draw attention to the epilogue. Because I do like the touch, because this story does have Remu, Remu, and it's getting her happy. It's fine. I like the nice touch. It's not gonna impact the story, because this is just the epilogue. It's just like, oh, this is just a thing for probably for me, because Remu gets her wish. She gets donations, despite the fact canonically, she gets like the author gets like some details about her bio wrong. It's kind of funny. It's like, oh, she wants equality between yokai and humans. One, pretty sure he was looking on this character's page when he looked that up. And two, also don't underestimate Rimu. She's killed some bitches. Don't. This is actually canon. This actually happened, and this is like in the context of her actually murdering someone. And also the whole shrine donations. This is mainly because in the lore, it's not so much the Moria shrine gets donations, although that doesn't help. But it's mostly because lots of yokai kind of live at her place. I mean, she had a Yoni living at her place. She has whatever the fuck this gremlin is, and like other characters. But that's like, again, this is something I just wanted to bring up just for like personal stake, because it's like none of this has any impact on the story, because this is just like, oh, this is just like inaccurate details. That's it. but no impact on the quality of the story. So, Multiverse Edition. The author actually wanted me to review the story like last year. However, at the time I was doing, I believe I was doing Bon Voyage. No, I was doing this one. I was doing this story, and this story took a lot of time. So I told him I'm just gonna do the story next year, and I want to apologize by saying I'm sorry it took this long. I really wasn't expecting it to take this long, because I was expecting the story, because I run everything on a roulette wheel, that this story would take like so long to get to. And for that, I'm sorry. Now let's get into the review. This, in terms of plot, there's 2 points I want to make mention of. The first one is the main plot, and the second one is a very minor plot that happens at the end of the story. When it comes to the main plot, it's just another total drama crossover. That's it. That's it. I will say, in terms of tone and application of the idea, this is actually one of the more creative total drama crossover fics. Usually, a lot of total drama crossover fics, they usually use like just standard. They take everything super seriously. There's usually a lot of drama. There's usually a villain that kind of just messes everyone up. Multiverse Edition actually doesn't do that. It strategically goes for a more relaxing environment. So it's more of a friendly competition between everyone before actually anything else. I think that makes the story stand out really well because if you look at Total Drama Endless, Total Drama Cruise, Total Drama Infinite, everything, all the other Total Drama fan fictions I've done so far, they're all these super serious affairs. So having Multiverse Edition be more or less the inverse of that, like more like, oh, we're just gonna have fun. Everyone seems to know everyone, with few exceptions like Remove, and trust me, I'm going to bring up spoilers. I'm going to bring up Remove for a very specific reason at the end. Trust me on this; it's very important. So just keep the shrine, keep the armpit shrine maiden in mind. So I like how the idea, the whole tone of the story is very different. And I even like a lot of the minutiae of the story in place. Like for instance, the story has what's called the buddy gimmick, and I think the buddy gimmick is legitimately a genius idea. And I know for a fact there is a sequel, and the author is doing that idea as well in the sequel as well. But more or less, how the buddy gimmick works is if players so wish, they can have multiple people kind of sign in the same along the dotted line at the same time on the same contract, so they actually compete together. In essence, working as a team. It can be anywhere from 2 people to 5 people. We don't really get anywhere in more than 3 people in this specific story. I know in the sequel, Team Ruby and Penny technically constitute a team of 5, but that's I didn't get a good enough look at like the roster of the sequel to really notice to notice like team dynamics and stuff like that. But in this story, it really doesn't go any higher than 5, which is the KND agents and the Totally Spies. And the idea is there are pros and cons to this gimmick. On the pro side, everyone gets like a slice of like immunity. So, for instance, let's use the Totally Spies as an example. So, say Totally Spy like merge happens, Totally Spies, one of them wins immunity. Therefore, the other 2 get eliminated. So, like if Clover wins a contest, Sam and Alex would get immunity regardless of how they did. I think that's really cool. Along with that, they also technically count as a faction. So all 3 of them get to vote at once. They don't have one shared vote. No, they get 3 individual votes and allowed to like vote whoever they want. If they want, they can collectively go, we're gonna vote on someone else to try and rig it in their favor. The fact that they're working together means there's inherent communication. There's no really inherent drama stuff, and there's also interesting dynamics like with the Eds deliberately try not to do do the buddy system specifically because they figured by going separate they can try and have a better shot at winning instead of being together where one person goes, the other 2 people go, which is more or less the big con. You're pretty much making yourself a gigantic target where if one person gets eliminated, say like again the Totally Spies, so if like Sam and Clover are safe, even if they get the marshmallows, and Alex gets voted out, Clover and Sam get outed too. I really love the idea, and I think for the most part the idea is executed really perfectly. A lot of people like do interaction, do different special things like how they interact with people and how they work together with like teaming up and stuff like that, and even like possibly collecting. Like, there's a point later in the story where Falcon deliberately gets rid of Ruby Rose, Weichny, and Blake Belladonna, because by getting rid of one, you basically get rid of three. And it's like they're at a numbers game, so I'd rather get rid of three people rather than one. It's a really neat idea. I really dig the whole concept behind this, and I really wish more total dramas do like these sort of really weird, interesting, esoteric gimmicks. Like the buddy system is really clever, and the fact that none of the other crossover total dramas really do this sort of deal. So that's another way the story stands out from all the other total drama crossovers. Uh, but but when it comes to the overall plot, it's at its core it's just another total drama crossover. It does things very differently from every other total drama, and I think that's what helped it stand out. But I think, there's not much I can cover when it comes to the plot. There is a specific plot point that I need to bring up because it's very important, because I need to actually mention this. Is this whole it's at the bottom. It's this whole smoke mirror plot. It's really a really bad idea. So on paper, the smoke mirror is there's during this scavenger challenge, Huey Freeman is tasked to get this special mirror from a museum. He calls Riley. Riley gets two characters named Jin and Rummy, basically play on Jin Rummy, to help him steal the mirror. It's like, I ain't doing it. I ain't stealing it. They're gonna steal it. They steal it. Huey looks at the mirror. A bright light flashes, and Huey is switched with a mirror, an inverse of himself. So basically, Huey's more of this like sarcastic, sardonic, kind of snarky, but ultimately a good kid. And evil Huey's just basically this ultra selfish. I guess I don't really. It's very hard to describe Mirror Huey, but the point is, Mirror Huey basically is trying to win the money for inherently selfish reasons. So Huey only really competed in this season because he found out Riley kind of slick on the season. He's like, I'm just here. No, I'm here to drag your ass back home. No. You didn't get me back by my grandfather. No, he gonna kick your ass. And grandfather's probably just, I'm gonna kick his ass. Where's my belt? Where's my belt? And all that jazz. Huey didn't really want to be there. He's just like, I can admit it this far. I might as well just try to win it. Just to try, hopefully, have my grandfather not be that mad. Which is an interesting motivation. But it comes to the point, and this is basically my main issue with this plot line. Because I do think the mirror idea has legs. The issue is at the point where it actually starts. It technically starts at chapter 61, but it doesn't really become relevant until around chapter 66. Like it technically starts at 61, officially starts at 66. Of a 77 chapter story. So the author is telling me that despite all this relaxation, despite all this like low key energy, like even the prize money is like very low. It's like 300,000. Usually, most other of these total drama fics do like $1 million or a couple million. This is like 300,000, really emphasizing that it's just more of a casual thing. And then at like the last 10 or so chapters, you decide we're gonna have a story. We're gonna have a story arc. We're going to try and get you invested in, like, the finalists. We're going to try and get you invested on who might win and the possible resolution of this storyline. And this storyline does not last for long. It technically starts here. It ends here. It lasts 10 chapters. 9 technically, because this is more of a like a whole thing. So it lasts 9 chapters of probably 70 chapter fic, because like these these five are useless. There's like this one down here that's useless. That's there's a poll. There's a couple others. So probably like if we rounded up 9 chapters out of a 70 chapter fic, and the author expects us to try and get invested in this at the very end of the story. It doesn't work. It comes way too late to remotely care about any of these characters. It comes too late to care about this specific plot line. If I know why the author did this, because all of the other total drama crossovers had this kind of like in outside influence, like total drama everything 2 had Nimona, Infinite 2 had Gajira, Infinite 3 technically had the TV guy. I'm blanking on his name. Even Endless technically had an outside influence because of the halfway point and also the epilogue. We don't talk about the epilogue. But those were very different. Those covered usually most of the story. Like, for instance, let's talk about like Nimona. Nimona more or less was like an entire story long, with Lammy finding the necklace at the beginning and the necklace slowly influencing her decision, her running away, her coming back reluctantly, and then eventually building up to the fight against Nimona. That carried on throughout the entire story. Same thing with Gajira. Granted, Gajira did take a bit to kind of get going, but Gajira's influence was kind of seen since like the very beginning of the story with like the fashion show challenge. But still, it slowly built up over the story. Even Endless with like the mid merge shift, like going from like traditional season of total drama to like this more classical style adventure story. That was very risky. That really could have backfired on nondescript Norbert, and it's more of a symbol of how good he is as a writer, that he managed to actually make that work, because it could have easily blown up in his face. This blew up in your face simply because it happens way too late in the story to get any sort of investment. Especially like the idea of like the mirror slowly creating inverse characters. That's something you can literally build an entire storyline on, an entire season on, like someone getting the mirror, flashing it in their face, and then that evil person slowly starts replacing the contestants with mirror versions, and then eventually get defeated. That's honestly a really captivating B plot to the whole. That would act as an undercurrent to the entire season. It would be very interesting, like how like knowing who to trust, who to not trust. It would be an immensely satisfying story. This, on the other hand, it's just so rushed. It doesn't really. It barely impacts the story because, again, it happens at the end of the story. We're not really given a reason to care about Mirror Huey as a villain. He's pretty much the closest thing the story has to a villain, and he's just so nothing that I just can't take him seriously as a villain. Even I would like to say I do like the touch of Luz from Owl House winning by pure luck. But no, not even pure luck, taking advantage of a situation to kind of make sure something happens. Like, oh, they're fighting Mirror Huey and regular Huey somehow get like, well, regular Huey somehow gets out of the mirror, they start fighting each other, the whole dimension starts breaking down. Luz taking advantage of the situation to try and help Marion and Falcon. Basically, launches herself at the two Hueys, launch them out. Technically, she does knock out Mirror Huey, who is still technically competing at this time, thus winning. But they're still fighting. So it actually leaves your mind for a second as they're still fighting, that you don't even know like who won. And it's like, oh yeah, Luz won. It's like, Hamza, what? So yeah, just watch the camera and it shows like, oh, I won. I think that's really clever, and I think that does have a lot of that goes back to that whole casual competition, like, oh, winning because she takes advantage of a situation. It's really cute. That being said, I do think, and then I'm going on to the characters this time. Luz is probably the weakest winner of all these total drama characters. Why? That's simple. I am not given any reason to care about any of these contestants. And I will say this, I would say the same criticism regardless of who won. Whether or not Luz won, Huey won, Falcon won, Marianne won, the criticism would still be the same in the fact that you're not giving us a reason to care about these characters. Why? Because none of these characters go through character development. None of these characters go through character arcs. They go through a lot of character depth with like them knowing each other and like showcasing like going into like the depths of the history and various characters and quirks from the perspective franchises they're from. But ultimately, depth doesn't make a compelling character. Depth can supplement a compelling character. It's character development and character arcs that give us a reason to care for these characters and see them want to win. It's why I like Terry versus Miyu and Infinite 2, because they were both compelling enough characters that you can reasonably see one of them win. It's why I loved Total Drama Endless Princess Peach, and unironically, I could literally make an entire video just on how well written Endless Peach is. I honestly think she's probably one of the best written characters in any fan fiction ever. I kid you not, she's that well written, and you see her grow as the story goes along, and you actually root for her. With these characters, with all of these characters, it basically boils down to just pick your favorite character and hope they win. Like regardless, like yeah, I probably would have picked Reimu to win. That's fine. She lost. Oh well. It's just like I didn't care for any of these characters. I didn't. I am just vastly apathetic of all these characters because not a single character has any sort of growth, any sort of arc to attach you to their character. That's how these types of stories work. Now, I will say, in this story's defense, you were probably going with less like little to no character arcs, character development, and focusing exclusively on character depth to kind of really sell the whole low down, casual feel of the story. And I think on that front, if that's what you were doing, that's actually a really nice touch. It would really incentivize the whole anyone can win mentality, and the fact that none of these characters really have a proper stake in the winning is like they'll probably go, if we win, we win. If we lose, well, we lose. It's no big deal. It really would sell that dynamic and dimension of the story. But even if you're doing it that way, my criticism will still remain. It's like I just don't care about Luz as a winner because she just has nothing as a character besides a lot of depth. A lot of neat depth, but again, depth itself doesn't really sell you on a character. Grammar errors. Now, for this story, there are two very specific grammar errors. One is, for whatever reason, the author keeps mixing up names. Like, there are minor actual misspellings and stuff like that, but they're very minor. What is more noticeable is because of how many characters, and there's weirdly a lot of characters. This is a lie. It's not 56 contestants. It's actually like 76 contestants plus like 6 or 7 more from like the merge. That's a lot. Uh, so I understand this specific error because since there's so many characters, you're gonna probably mix up. You're probably gonna mix up and not realize you're you're saying the wrong names. Like say Dipper and Mabel. Dipper walks up to Mabel, and then he writes, "How you doing, Mabel?" And then it says Raphael or Raph, and it's like you're just completely thrown for a loop. It's like what the hell? You're just confused. That's not really a big deal uh, because again, there's so many characters. I can kind of understand why you're doing why these mistakes happen. What isn't a mistake And what is honestly even more egregious is I need to actually go on my Google Docs for this. So a running theme throughout the entire story is something that is a very, very annoying. I will say this is probably a result of probably inexperience, but let's use Dipper and Mabel as an example. This is something I saw a lot through the story. It said, "How are you?" No, no, no. Let's say this. Dipper walks up to Mabel. How are you? Mabel said Dipper. I misspelled Dipper like an idiot. Just trust me, I know what I'm doing. I'm doing. I no. No, wait, wait. I gotta do this. Hello. Hello, Mabel. I hope you're okay. Having a great day, said Dipper. Now, I had to. Okay, this is category categographically wrong. I I know I'm probably misusing that word, but this is wrong. This is something he does throughout the entire story, where he has someone say something like Dipper right here, and then he has the character say something else, and have them say it again. It should be like this. When you do something like this, if you have again Dipper as an example, if you have Dipper say something like "Hello, Mabel," and then there's another thing that follows it up, you're on anyone who reads is automatically going to assume that it's probably the same person speaking, unless you have yeah, unless you have something like this to show that it's Mabel speaking, for example. If it's just blank, then that automatically clues whoever is reading that the same person, i.e., Dipper, is still speaking. It's a very common, well used writing tactic. However, throughout this entire story, the author does shit, wait does this like all the time, and it's very annoying. It's very distracting to anyone who's paying attention because now you're just constantly seeing said Dipper again, said Raph again, said Yang, saying Yang again, over and over again. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens frequently enough that you catch onto it and it starts to get really, really aggravating. And that's really all I have to say about that. I just wanted to point those two out. Now for pacing issues, I do think the pacing is fine, except for the merge. I don't know why the author decided to go and have like most of the contestants get eliminated like really quickly. Like in this chapter, the first after the first one happened, like 19 characters at once get eliminated. It really kind of speaks like the authors kind of cut it short and kind of speed things up because it's taking too long, which doesn't really make sense because his sequel is like the longest total drama fan fiction across both this site and Archive of Our Own. Yeah, fun fact. Yeah, his sequel is the longest fan fiction in total drama in the total drama section. So it's really strange. The author decided to eliminate so many people at once in a foot race. This is my problem with this because it's just like, oh, it's just it's just a really shitty contest, really shitty race where like nothing really happens, which becomes superfluous when the next challenge is a round robin, which would make more narrative sense to do a mass elimination because we're only gonna have like the top three teams win. Have fun, and then you can just have everyone like take a fight, and then kind of do the montage and have the other everyone but the top three teams win the whole thing. It it just makes so much more sense narrative wise and pacing wise because this is more an interesting whole idea of eliminating a bunch of people than whatever the fuck this is. So, but other than that, I don't have an issue pacing wise. Right? It's just this is just like a really really badly done pace breaker. Everything up to like chapter 64, no chapter 65, my bad, is paced pretty well. Like there are some challenges which are more simple, and probably like one or two characters from one team have a distinct advantage. Like there was the eating contest, which there's an entire character. There's Shaggy and Scooby on one team, and it's like, oh yeah, let's just eat them. No, and just like there you go. And it's like that challenge is like barely anything. So it's like okay, this like it's a very short, sweet challenge. No distinct, no way to like stretch it along. Let's just have it done. So I do like it. I do think it's fine. Another thing with the pacing is like is due to how long the story lasts and how certain challenges go. Everyone, with the exception, even with like Noah, who was the first eliminated in the story, he, yeah, he he basically gives every single character like that a single moment to shine, regardless of how big or small it is, which I think is a nice touch with how many characters there are. But yeah, I think that's it with the pacing. Would I recommend the story? I want to say no personally, but I do think it is legitimately different enough. And I do like a lot of the stuff. Like I said, everything. I just don't like the mass elimination because I think it's just a pacing breaker, just out of nowhere. And I don't like the mirror plotline because it just happens way too late. But everything up to that, and even during like the whole weird mirror gimmick, it's still entertaining enough. I was like, yeah, I recommend it. I think it's an overall solid story. I wouldn't say it's spectacular. I wouldn't say that much, but I do think it's a pretty good above average story with only really just the just the issues I said before being like really egregious. Favorite part? I have to say this probably the Castle of Destiny chapters is probably my favorite finale of any of these total drama crossovers. Even endless, I would say, does not capture the sense of fun and enjoyment that the Castle of Destiny has. It's just it's just here's a series of small challenges covering more or less everything that happened throughout the season. Falcon from Power Stone, Marion from Miraculous Ladybug, Luz Nakata from Owl House, and Mirror Huey Freeman from the Boondocks. Just complete these final challenges. Go off, and it's such a massive, wild ride. I just found it entertaining. Plus, I also love the hilarious dig towards Lacey next stage. I don't know why, because honestly, fuck that stage. I don't know what they were thinking with that stage. I really don't know what Kata was thinking. Oh wait, they rushed X6 because the guy who created Mega Man didn't want to work anymore. They went behind his back. Just just don't do what Capcom does. Any struggling game developers, don't do X6. Don't do what they did. But I do think this is just an overall entertaining, fun. It really even with my complaints as Luz as a winner, it really does epitome the fact that realistically any one of these four could have won. That's what I'm looking for in a finale. The feeling that realistically anyone could win. And this three part challenge really gives that overall vibe that any one of these four people could realistically win. Granted, Luz was the one who won at the end, but I wouldn't have been mad if Huey won or Marionette won or even Falcon won. That just kind of shows the strength and entertainment factor of this finale. It's a ridiculously fun ending to the story. And of course, it segues into the epilogue where like everyone just visits Reimu just to kind of cheer her up because like ah. Although now that I think about it, I just noticed I just realized with this entire epilogue, where's Best Doggo? You couldn't even spare a sentence to like her just showing up like arf. just deserving head pats. Come on, you would want to pet that to me. So okay, so now that I got that out of the way, what would I do to fix this story? Honestly, there are two paths. I want to take a deep breath because it's got to take a bit. There are two paths I can see going with the direction of the story. One, the mirror storyline covers the entire story. It carries on through the entire story. However, that will require the Static Shock to rewrite the entire story to fit the entire mirror storyline in. Now you're wondering, how would I do the mirror storyline if it's carried over the entire story? Remember Reimu, I mentioned I'm going to be mentioned here later? Yeah, this is it. Instead of Huey finding the mirror near the very end of the story, have, say, probably the second, maybe pretty early before it gets going. So probably like the first 4 or 5 episodes, if you want to go like that. Do the scavenger hunt challenge. Reimu finds the mirror instead. She looks at it. We get replaced with evil version Reimu, who's very hyper competent and very dangerous because the whole thing with Reimu is that she's very strong, but she's also very lazy, and you have to really kind of move mountain earth to try to get her to do something. But when she does it, she's very effective at it. While this one is she's just a hyper competent Reimu. Like you can probably just say like the comparison of like one of the Wakatsuki sisters because her whole thing is she's basically Reimu if she actually trained and was competent. But yeah, that's it. But you make Reimu the overall villain. And again, Reimu being a villain is not even a non-canon thing because throughout the entire Toho franchise, Reimu does assume the role of an antagonist. He was more or less a villain protagonist in Unidentified Fantastic Object because she just beat up a bunch of Buddhists because they were just flying around in the ships. Like that's unnatural. I thought you wanted to steal money from the Reimu. Shut up, shut up, Marissa. Help me rob the ship. And she basically just beat up Sine because she just insulted the shrine because it looks shabby, which canonically it is. It's a very shabby looking shrine. Basically, have Reimu be the one to look in the mirror first. She assumes the main villain role, and her whole role in the story will be she preys on unsuspecting people, she shoves the mirror in their face, they get replaced by the mirror counterpart, regardless of if they turn evil or good. Everyone starts to, over the course of the story, everyone starts to suspect something, but they don't know who's causing it, who's behind it. And eventually we get to the merge where it's eventually revealed, because there's enough character you can do this, that, oh no, Reimu has an entire fucking army. And this is where I have to point out two very specific plot holes. And in order for me to explain this and kind of explain the situation of where I would need to go with this, I would need to explain these plot holes. Okay. So a lot of these total drama stories, when it comes to writing them, a lot of these stories, with one or two exceptions, try to write these characters as close as they can to canon. That includes a lot of details involving them and how they operate and how they interact with their characters. Reimu, and by extension Marissa Kirisame, who doesn't actually appear in several cameos, Gensokyo is a purposely cut off piece of Japan from the world. They're basically live behind the Great Hakure Barrier, with the one rule being you can enter, but you can't leave. The only exceptions to this rule are Mamizo Futsatsu. Fuck, her last name is like very confusing. Mamizo Futsatsuya, mainly because she's basically a well-known local legend in the Sado Island. So basically, she is like the only exception. She can just leave and enter Gensokyo whenever the fuck she wants because she's like the one yokai in all of Toho who can willingly leave and not die. And finally, the yokai sages. Yukari Yukumo, Kasen Ibaraki, and this bitch, Okina Matara. Now, you're wondering why I have to bring these four up here. Why? It's mainly because of Yukari. There are a couple plot holes. Why it never properly explains how Rimu and Marissa get there. Mainly because, again, Gensokyo is so closed off from everything, so it really would make no sense for those two to be able to either compete or appear in cameos, as in the case of Marissa. There's also the mirror plot hole. So at the end, and I actually showed this off, at the end of this chapter, you actually see the smoke mirror is actually sinking down to the bottom of the sea. However, the next chapter, not this chapter, but around this chapter, around here, Lindsay randomly finds it. So, for context, Jack Horner grows big, punches the island so hard it sinks. Lindsay, while finding the bathroom, somehow randomly comes across the mirror in probably the most unintentionally forced way possible. It's like you just needed the mirror. You just needed the mirror to be found by the dumbest contestant, and you had to pick Lindsay. It really makes no narrative sense because how the hell did she get the mirror? She found it. Well, how the fuck did she get to the bottom of the ocean to find it? I don't know. So what does that have to do with what I plan? Well,
Yukari-sama, お目覚めですか?
Why Yukari Yakumo? I didn't really want to force the Toho on this specific plotline because I was hoping to try and use every other character to kind of solve this issue. However, it really comes down to specifically Yukari that needs to fix this issue. Where do I go by that? Well, everyone in Gensokyo can't really watch the events of Total Drama except for Yukari, because her whole gimmick and her whole power in Gensokyo is the manipulation of boundaries. I don't mean like superficial boundaries. No. Zun goes full on Ichiro Oda on this power. Yukari can basically manipulate the boundaries of anything. If she wants to open a boundary from here to there, she'll open it, bam, done. If she wants to manipulate the boundary on the concept of life and death, she can do that. Hot and cold, she can do that. Space and time, she can do that. She is monstrously overpowered in terms of what the fuck she can do. This would explain away every single plot hole that happens throughout the story. What I would propose happens is every time Chris gets some kind of device, he gets the multiverse portal gun from an alternate Rick. How does he get the multiverse gun? How about when he reaches his hand out, a gap, i.e. Yukari's gap, drops down, he grabs it, he can use it. This would also explain how Marissa's able to compete in the cameos, because she just opens a gap to get Marissa to Camp Wawanakwa, and then she just does Marissa things, probably steal a bunch of shit, I don't know. Why do I need to use Yukari? Well, I would propose having the same thing with the mirror. Once Rimu has enough followers to kind of just to kind of take over the game and possibly, I don't know, take over the world, she tossed the mirror into the ocean willingly. With Yukari, she would notice eventually that Rimu is acting off. Yukari wouldn't know what's going on at first because, again, she would be the only member of the Toho franchise. Well, not really. There's still Sumareko. Sumareko would probably watch the whole thing. But Yukari would be the only one really investing in the show because she's trying to watch Rimu. You can even do this whole thing like, oh, when Rimu shows up, say that she's really only competing under the promise that Yukari is watching the whole thing, and thus, if something does happen, she's gonna reach in, grab Rimu, bring her to Gensokyo, and Rimu would willingly give up at that point. So in essence, that would give stakes to Rimu's involvement in the story. She's basically there on a unknown time limit. She doesn't know when she might get eliminated. Something might happen. Yukari just grabs her because Yukari would realistically be able to do that. So when Rimu and Evil Rimu switch, Evil Rimu would probably not know about Yukari because in essence, she probably, if we go like the inverse, Yukari would probably not either like do what Okina does and kind of just hide from everyone, or she'd just be like hyper vigilant, hyper destructive, something like that. But with Yukari would kind of act as a distant figure throughout the entire story. And kind of just getting Chris what he needs to complete his challenges, all the gears, all the money, all the like the boats and stuff like that. He wouldn't say, "Oh, I got a bugger budget," because again, of $300,000. He gets it from Yukari, who just opens a gap, gets the stuff there, done. She wouldn't even have to make an appearance because you could just show her interact, like giving him the stuff with the gaps. Again, she wouldn't physically make an appearance until the end of the story when Rimu plans on basically doing, once I got this money, I will use it to, I don't know, some evil thing. That evil thing, be anything. The only thing is it needs to have an impact on the Hakure barrier because Yukari physically will not get involved with anything like an incident unless specifically the Great Hakure barrier is legitimately at danger of being destroyed. And when the Hakure barrier is destroyed, every yokai and god in Gensokyo just flat out dies. Except for Mamizu, because she's special that way. What do you think I specifically had her voted for Winter Warriors? That's why. She'd be the only one who can get away with that. Oh, and Sakuya, because she's human too. At this point, Yukari would realize that the barrier is in legitimate danger, actually has to physically get involved. She gets the mirror, and now it's just, well, there's an issue. What is the issue? Yukari, what's the issue? Rimu is making sure I can't get to her. And so the whole thing could just be the one big mission. Every single person who's left alive has to work together to get Yukari to Rimu to shove the mirror on her face. They do eventually beat everyone. They beat Rimu. Rimu passes out. Yukari basically tells Chris, Rimu's done here. I'm taking her back. She goes. Now you say, well, Rimu, you're being biased towards Toho. Yeah, because I didn't want to use Yang, but there's no one else I can realistically use from any of these characters' mediums that can provide an easy way to get the mirror back on the island. Yukari is the only character from everyone who is left. Like, if we're just using the characters from where is it? Get there here. Using all these characters, Yukari's quite literally the only character who can get it that fast because all she needs to do, open a boundary. For me, opens a boundary between me and the mirror. Mirror drops out. A lot of ocean water drops out, but she gets the mirror anyway. Everyone else I could think of would have to have time dedicated to getting the mirror because they would have to specifically look for it. Yukari is the only character from any of these characters' franchises who kind of ignores that because she wants the mirror, she gets the mirror instantly. And then of course you basically do the whole thing afterwards where the last four, including a good guy Huey, basically compete. You have Luz still win. You would have to rewrite the entire story to have character development, have character arcs specifically for the four main characters plus Mandy, because I can see Mandy assuming like a villain protagonist role. Like, okay, because I think out of everyone, Mandy would be the only one not who would be able to resist the mirror because I think she's dealt with similar things in the past. So she would technically have to assume the role of the leader of the good guys just until evil Rimu is kind of defeated, and then they kind of team up, kick her off, and all that. The other thing I would suggest, is getting rid of the mirror plotline altogether because it's just way too late in the story. This would require less work to do because you would only really need to change here to here and just get rid of the mirror plot line. I would also get rid of this entire chapter. It would just make more sense to have the mass elimination just be the Smash Brothers style challenge. Like have it be like, okay, you have ten teams. Three of the teams are gonna make it to the finale. The rest of the teams just go. Everyone kind of works together. Eventually, like the three teams who are going to make it at the end, they make it to the end, and then you just kind of do the same thing you did again with just a good Huey, and you can still have Lowe's win the whole thing. Personally, if you do that way, you probably would have to have Mandy be in the finals. You probably have to have Mandy switch with Huey in that regard because Mandy would probably be the bit you it would be more compelling because now you have Huey gone. You need to get rid of Huey and just replace him. Yeah, have it be in that case. You'd have to have it be Marion, Falcon, Luz, and Mandy in the files. Again, you still have Luz win the whole thing, but it carry a more. It still would retain the more casual vibe of the whole story. But that's really all I would change. Also, get rid of fix the grammar errors. I think the story just needs a even if you don't go either ideas, just a general sense of just going through the entire story and giving it a straight, just some polish would go a long way. That's really all I have to say about this story. Sorry for being so long. So, and again, sorry to Static Shock for taking so long of getting into this review. So, this has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.